All right, today I'm going to be teaching a playthrough of Bushido, which is a two-player only game. So I will be actually playing both characters today. I'll kind of explain how the game is played as I'm going through, give a little overview at the beginning, and then we'll go ahead and play through. So in Bushido, you are trying to eliminate your opponent. So we have the gray player I'm going to refer to here with their health at 12, and the black player over there with their health at 12. So your goal is to get their health down to zero. If both players' health are at zero at the same point in the game, then it is a draw. So, the very first thing that you must do at the beginning of the game is you are going to draft some of these technique cards. So, I'm going to put those cards out right here, and we're going to call this the first drafter, which makes this player the first striker. So they'll do the first attack, they'll do the first draft. So how the draft works is four cards come out like this, and the first drafter will choose a card, and then the second player will choose the next card, and then the other two go away. And we keep doing this until they both have five technique cards. So let me just hold a technique card up just to kind of explain some of the things on it. So the first thing is the type of technique it is right here. This is how many type of dice you will have when you are using this technique card, and then some kind of ongoing effect. So as the gray player is playing as the first drafter, they're going to look at these cards and they're going to choose ones that they think would benefit them. As you're drafting them, you're going to want to think about these types, the symbols up here, because you can boost cards that have the same symbol. Also to note, the red, again, I'll hold it up. The red symbol is mainly attack dice. The blue symbol is mostly defense. And then the gray, which is that second one there, has a combination of defense and attack. So keeping that in mind, they're going to, for the first card, it doesn't really matter, but then they're going to want to think about future cards. They're also looking at the effects. I'll read the effects as they come up in the game. I'm not going to read them all right now. This one's a super big defense card, so they might take that one just so they have a good defense. So they're going to take that one, and then over to the black player. And they kind of like this one, so it's got 3 gray, which is a mixture of attack and defense. So they figured if they need to do both, they can do that. So they draft those. These 2 go away. 4 more cards come out. And now it switches so that the black player is now drafting first. So again, we have to keep in mind they have already one of these green triangle symbols. So they might look out here and think, okay, maybe I want this, because the more of those you have, the better you can like boost off of them. You don't necessarily need to go for those. I think they really like this one because they like the effect that's on it. So they're going to go ahead and take that strong parry. And then back over to the gray. So they have a water. There aren't any waters. Now, this one is a basic. It can't be boosted at all. So they have a big defense one. So maybe they want an attack one. So they're going to go with this Mumashi Strike. And then these 2 go away. So now they both have 2 cards. So again, they're going to do this 3 more times. So they both have 5 technique cards. And looking at these and looking over their effects, again, they have a purple symbol, so it might be a good idea to get one. This also has a combination of attack and defense, because they got blue and red dice, so they're going to go ahead and get that one. And then this, the black player has some wind and that triangle one. They already have a defense one. They have a half and half. This one kind of does a little bit of everything, so I think they're going to go, but there is this 3 attack, and they don't have any big attack ones, so they're going to actually take this basic one and get that big attack. All right, so that's the third card, so they're going to do this 2 more times now, and now this black player is drafting first, and I think they want to try and get some boosting cards, so they're going to take this because they already have one of those green triangle ones. And then back over here, so they have a couple of those purple symbols. So I think they are going to go with this disarming strike and kind of keep that strategy going. Now, I'm not really reading the effects too much just because I'm trying to get through this quickly. But typically you want to read the effects and think about how these effects could benefit them. So now it is back over to the first drafter, which is the gray player. And I think they are going to go, they want a big attack one too. So they're going to go ahead and take that same card that the black player did. And then back over to the black player. They have a couple of these. I think they're going to go with this one. I've played with this one before. This one's got a pretty cool ability. You can copy the opponent's other cards. So they're going to do that. All right, so that's how the draft works. So they both drafted 5 technique cards, which they will now keep in their hands. So they're going to keep, I'm going to keep grays down here, and I'll put blacks. I can actually keep them off to the side like this. All right, the next thing they must do, and starting with the black player, since they're going to be the first striker, is they must now choose which weapon they are going to start with. So they both have, players we're going to have the exact same weapons, but you're going to choose one weapon, and that's your weapon for the entire game. So each game's a little different depending on which weapon. So they're going to look at these, and they're going to pick one that they think would fit the technique cards. So I'm going to go ahead and look at those, and we'll pick one for the black player, and then we'll pick one for the gray player. All right, so they both secretly chose their weapons. So they go face down here. And now starting with the first striker, who's going to do the first attack. And again, they are first striker because they were the first drafter. They are going to choose a type of guard. So there's high guard, mid guard, and low guard. And the reasoning for those is the types of dice. So you'll see high guard has 2 red, which is attack. Mid is attack, and the gray die, which is both attack and defense. And then low has that gray and blue, which is mostly defense. And these, not only are they going to give them certain dice, but depending on the weapon they chose, which I'll show in a second, are going to match up with like if they're in high guard, they'll get a high guard effect from this weapon. Mid guard, mid effect. Low guard, low effect. Okay, so they are actually going to start in the high guard, and the gray player is going to start in mid guard. So now they do that, they both flip and show their weapons, and I'll hold these up so we can see them. So if you look on the one-hand side that has token limit, that tells them how many starting armor tokens they'll start with, and it's actually the max amount of tokens they can ever hold. So they're going to start with 3 armor tokens, and they'll only ever be able to have 3 tokens at a time. But there are the effects. So high guard, which is what they're in right now, it says if you boost on a turn, you get to roll 1 additional red die. So I'll talk about boosting when we play. When they're in mid guard, it says you may store 1 attack die on this card and apply that hit on another turn. So if they're like, it's not going to be effective this turn, they can save it for another turn. And then low guard says you may use boost cards to boost any technique card, which is really nice because boost cards basic cards typically can't boost anything. So that's their weapon that they chose. And now the gray players, they got the katana, so they have 2 armors that tokens they'll start with, and they can only have 2 max. So high guard is when you resolve 3 attacks, they get to roll 1 additional die. Mid guard, which is what they're in now, it says once per turn you may change 1 armor into defense, and I'll talk about those. And low guard is when you focus, you gain 1 rage token, so that's their weapon. All right, so now they both have their weapons, and they could have both chose the same. So the next thing you do is you give them their armor. So this one, the gray player starts with 2, and then I put these markers in here to show that they can't ever have more than 2 tokens here at a time. And the black player gets 3 armor tokens, so only one of those goes in there. They start with 3 armor tokens. All right, and I'll explain, I think, the rest as we play. So the black player is going to start. So the very first thing, and everything is written right here, the very first thing they must do is technique or change their guard. Changing your guard, because I'll explain that quickly. Changing your guard means you would move your guard token to one of these other ones, and then it even reminds you here, whenever you change guard, you get one of these rage tokens. That would go in your holding area, okay? What these rage tokens do is you can spend any amount of them to add 1 attack die, one of the red dice. If it's in anything that goes in your holding area, you can't use until your next turn. It'll come over here and be active. Okay. The other thing is when you switch guard, any technique cards you have go back into your hand. So if you don't have any cards left to play from your hand, you actually have to change guard. But you can change guard even if it wouldn't give you any cards back. All right. So they are not going to change guard. So they're going to play a technique card. So these are the technique cards they chose. And I think they want to go on offensive since they are already in high guard. So they're going to start off with this Furious Charge, which starts with 3 red dice, and they gain 1 of these Torii tokens. So I'll explain that. So they put their technique card here. They gain a Torii token, which these can be used to re-roll any dice. And you can keep spending these, but once you resolve dice, you cannot use these anymore. So this goes in the holding area, so they won't be able to use it this turn anyway. All right. The next thing is we have to look at which dice. So they got 3 red dice from that card. They are in high guard, which gives them 2 more red dice. And we have to remember, since they're in high guard, their weapon says if you boost on a turn, you roll an additional red die. They did not boost. I'll show a boost later. But boost basically is spending an extra card that matches that symbol so they can gain an extra die. So they did not boost, so they don't get their high guard ability. All right. So now they must roll dice. So they're going to roll. All right. And then they could spend Torii if they had any, so they would have them right here. They don't. And so now they apply the dice. So the attack dice for each of these slash symbols, the attacks, they move their opponent's marker up. So they got 3. So 1, 2, 3. Now the gray player is going to have to do something about this on their turn when they resolve their dice, or they will take 6 damage off of their health. Okay? So that was resolving their dice. Now we collect anything from the holding area. So they would collect this, but notice they have, these are all maxed out, so they couldn't take this unless they replace something, and they are. They're going to replace one of those armors, so that's just gone. And then we check for end of game. We see if either player has 0 health. They both are still at 12. All right. So they don't lose. Gray player does not lose their health until they get a chance to respond. So now it's over to the gray player's turn. And they could change guard, which they're in mid guard, or they're going to play a technique card. So they took some hits there. This might be a good time for them to defend. So they took this major defense card. All right, so this defense card gives them 3 blue dice. I'll hold it up here. So they get 3 blue dice, and it says you cannot collect the blue tokens, which are armor tokens. Neither of them have had to use those yet, so I'll explain them when they use them. So no matter what they do, they cannot collect armor tokens. And then it says they roll 1 red die for each attack you defend with the defense that looks like that person sprinting away. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind when they roll. So now they're going to collect their dice. So they get 3 blues, which are mostly defense. It's kind of why they chose this, because they're taking some hits here. They're mid guard, so they get 1 red, 1 gray. And then remember, their card says, since they're mid guard, it says once per turn you may change a armor die roll into a defense. Okay, so they're going to roll their dice. All right, so let me explain. We got some new symbols here. So this symbol, which is on the gray and blue die, is armor tokens. So for each one of those, they would get armor tokens. This symbol is the defense. For each one of these, they move this token down. And lastly, this symbol, you get an option. You could strike or focus. If you focus, that's how you gain some of these Torii tokens, which are the reroll tokens. Or you could strike. And how strike works is they would take this die and one of the red dice they didn't use and roll again. And these can explode, meaning they can, like, if I get another one of these, I can keep doing it over and over and over again. So they get a choice here. I think they do want to strike, so they're going to take this, they're going to take this other die, and they're going to roll. And so here's what I was saying about exploding. So they got another one. They could strike again or focus, but I think they're going to strike. They're going to keep trying to get them. All right, well, unfortunately, I got blanks there. So now they can resolve dice, but remember, they're in mid-guard, so it says once per turn, you can change one of these armors into a defense, which is, I think, what they want to do. So they're going to change this into a defense. So now they're going to resolve dice, and you can resolve dice in any order. So they're going to do these 2, which moves this down 2. So 1, 2. They're going to use this to get an armor token, which again goes in the holding area. And then they did one hit, one attack. And remember, I forgot, they cannot collect armor tokens, so they don't get that armor token because of the card they chose. And then it says roll 1 red die for each attack you defended with these. So they defended 2 of those, so they get to roll 2 more red dice. And just so you know, if they had a Tori token, they could not use it during this time because they already resolved dice. They're just going off this effect now. All right, so they got a blank and another one of those where they could strike or focus. They're going to strike. They're going to try and do some more damage. All right, so nothing, but they're going to strike again. And you can see how that can really do a lot of damage, or nothing in this case. So nothing happened with that. Now, these armor tokens, these can be used to reduce the damage. So they're going to spend this one and reduce the damage down to 0. And that ends their turn. So they don't take any damage. They ended up reducing it all. All these dice come away, and now it is back over to the black player's turn. All right, so now they are going to look at their cards. They could switch into guard, or they could continue playing cards. They're going to do Enduring Strength, which gives them 3 gray dice, and it says you cannot strike. So if that gate symbol comes up, they must do the focus, which gives them a Tori token. And it says you add 1 red die for every 2 armors you resolve. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to boost. So what a boost is, you take a card with the same symbol, so they have the same symbol, you tuck it underneath, like that. And for every card that you boost with, so they could boost with multiple cards if they had them, you get an additional die of your choice. So let's collect the dice. So they get 3 gray dice. They get 2 red dice from the high guard. And since they boosted, they get to pick any other die they want. They're going to go for another attack die. All right. Now, we are in high guard. So it says if you boost in a turn, you get to roll an additional attack die. So they are rolling 4 attack dice and 3 of these mid-level dice, which could be attack or defense. Okay. So remember, we cannot strike, and we add 1 red die for every 2 armor symbols we end up resolving. So they're going to roll. All right. And they do have this Tori token right here, which they would have to do this before they decide to resolve their dice. So they would have to decide if they want to use this now before they resolve anything. So this, they could reroll as many dice as they want. I think they're kind of happy with this. They only have 1 blank. So I think they're going to leave everything the way it is. So they have 4 attack, which moves this up 1, 2, 3, 4. Now notice this does 10 damage. If they had made it any further, if their opponent does not get it off these skulls, they immediately die. They don't even lose health points, they just die. So they were 1 away from just doing that. But again, they still get a chance to respond. They have 1 of these defense, so they go down 1 there, and they got 1 armor token. So they get that. Now, they don't get to roll an additional die because they only resolved 1 of these armored dice. And that is the end of their turn. Now, this armor token would come over here. They could replace 1 of these. I think they still want to keep these, so they're just going to discard that armor token that they got. And now it goes back over to the gray player. So they have a lot to defend against. They used their big defense card earlier, so they're looking at their cards, and I think they're going to go ahead and they're going to do a boost of their own, and they're actually going to boost with 2 cards. So they're going to use this Tashabishi, and I apologize for saying some of these wrong, which gives them 2 red dice, 1 blue, and it says when you resolve 2 defenses, your opponent cannot roll blue dice. So if they get 2 defenses, the opponent won't be able to use blue dice to defend. And since they use 2 cards to boost with, they get to take 2 additional dice. So they're going to put that there. They get 2 red, 1 blue, a red, a gray from the mid, and then they get 2 additional dice. So I think they really want to get some of these blue dice to take defense, so they're going to put 2 blue dice. Okay? And remember, they're mid guard, so once per turn, they can change 1 armor into 1 of these defense symbols. They're going to roll. All right, not the best roll for them. So They are going to resolve these. They don't have any Taurus, so they can't re-roll. So they're going to do this, which moves this down twice, and they're going to use their Midgard ability, which turns this into one of these. So they're going to do it down again, and I think they're going to hold on to this. So they're going to just take the 1 damage, go down to 11. They didn't do any damage to them, but they did resolve at least 2 of these, so the opponent will not be able to roll any blue dice on their turn. All right, and that ends the gray player's turn. And then any of this damage that was here just goes down to 0 after they already took their damage there. So now it is the black player's turn, which they haven't taken any damage, so they don't have to worry about being too defensive now. Again, they are down to only 2 technique cards left, so they could switch guards. This might be a good time since they're not taking any damage. And remember, we cannot use blue dice to defend, which isn't a big deal, or we can't even roll blue dice, which if we look at our cards, both of them have blue dice on it. So maybe this is a time to switch guards. So we're going to do that. We're going to go from high guard to mid guard. So we get these cards back into our hand. And then every time we switch guards, you get a rage token, which goes in the holding area. So we can't use that yet. And then now our new mid guard ability is you may store 1 attack die on this card and apply that hit later. So we only get the red and the gray die, which is fine because we couldn't use blue dice anyway, so it's a good time to do this, and we're not taking any damage. So let's go ahead and roll. And this is cocked, so I'm going to roll it again. All right, so they get a defensive token, which doesn't really help them because they're maxed out, so they would just take this and then discard it. And they could reroll, but I don't think this is a good time to reroll. So they're just going to end their turn. They don't have any. This goes from the holding area to here, so now they can use it to add extra red dice for each one of those. So that's their turn. So back over to gray. And gray is down to 1 card. So this is definitely a good time for them to switch guards because they didn't take any damage. So they're going to go from mid guard to high guard. So they get their cards back. They get 1 rage token holding area. And now their new high guard ability is when you roll 3 hits, you get to roll 1 additional red die. So they're just rolling those 2 red dice. All right, so there's 1, and they're going to use this to strike. So they're going to roll that with another red die. And so they did 2. Unfortunately, it's not 3, so they do 2. So they don't get that ability. And there's nothing over here. They don't have to defend themselves with this armor token. So this rage will go into the holding area, and that's their turn. All right, so now back over to black, who now has all of their cards back. So they have some things to defend with. And I think what they want to do is they're going to go on that. They're going to do that furious charge. So they're going to go 3 attack dice. They get 1 of these Torii tokens, which goes in the holding area. So they haven't used any, so this might be a good time for them to use it. So they get 3 red from that. They get a red and a gray. And remember, they can store an attack die on this card because they're in mid guard. So they're going to roll. And I forgot, they could have, if they're going to use a rage token, they have to decide to do that. They didn't want to anyway. So they have this, so they could strike or they could focus, but they have a bunch of these Tories, so they're going to strike. And there's their result. Let's go ahead and use this Torii token since we're getting one, and we'll re-roll both of these because we don't need the armor token. All right, woo, lots of damage. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They could store them, but I think 6 is good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if gray player doesn't at least move it at least 2 times, they are going to lose because they're on that one of those skulls. So that was pretty good. Now, they didn't end up getting any defenses, so they're going to use both of these guard tokens, and that's going to get rid of that. And so their turn's done, so this comes in the holding area, and they get one of those. So I guess they could have kept their arm, but it ended up being damage on them anyway. So that is their turn. So gray is up, and they need some major defense. So this is their big defense card. I think that might be the one they want to do. Now, they could do some boosts and get some more defense dice. But looking at their cards, they're going to go with that defense. So they're going to put out Tidal Wave. So they get 3 blue dice. 2 red dice from the high guard. And remember, they cannot collect any of these because of the card they chose, and they get to roll 1 red die for each hit they defend with one of these defense symbols. And again, if they roll 3 hits, which would be unlikely unless they use this rage token, which I don't think they're worrying. Maybe they want to be on the offensive and make them have to defend. So they are going to do that. They're going to take another die. They're going to roll. All right, so they have these. They have this. They can't collect armor tokens, so this is useless to them. But let's go ahead and do... do they want a strike or a focus? They're only doing 1, so maybe they just want to do a focus. So they're going to just take this to be a focus. They defend 2, so 1, 2. And again, when they roll when they defend the attacks with these, they get to roll 1 red die for each. So they're rolling 2 more red dice. All right, so that added 2 more attacks. They do 1, 2, 3, and they can't collect the armor token because of this. And they're going to spend this 1 armor token to go from taking 10 damage to only 6, which is still pretty rough. So they go from 11 down to 5. So they're going to need some help here. And then they get this Tori token, and that's their turn. And then that goes down to 0 because they took the 6 damage already. All right. Back over to black. So black smells blood in the water. So they want to try and finish this off. So I think what they are going to do, they're looking at their cards. They want to get some big attack. Now, this card is interesting. So I picked this one in the draft because I've played with this one before. But they get 2 red, 1 blue. They could spend their Tori before rolling, and this card would copy the opponent's card, their dice and the text. So that would give them the 3 blue dice, which will help them with defense. They couldn't collect any armor tokens, but they get that roll 1 red die for every time they defend. That might be a good time to do this because we don't have a lot of defensive cards. We do have this one, which says your attack resolve as attack and defense, but we're only rolling 1 attack die with that because we'd have 2 blue. So I think we're going to do this one. We're going to do the Observant Reflection, and we can't boost because we don't have any blue cards. And so they are going to spend this Tori token to copy this. So they get the dice and the text of this. So you basically ignore what this card says. So we get 3 blue. We get our red and gray from our mid guard. And we cannot collect armor tokens. And every time we take away a damage with one of these defense symbols, then we get to roll another red die. And we could use this rage token. I think we're going to because we want to really make sure that we can either finish them off or slowly pick away at them. So we're going to roll these dice. All right, so they got 2 armors, which they can't collect because they copied this text. They have 2 of these, which they're going to resolve, so boom, boom. They have 2 of these. Now, they could store 1, but I think they're going to add those. So 1, 2, and then since they were able to defend with these, because that's what this text says, they get to roll 1 red die for each one they defended with. And that is, that's a cock die. So my ruling is anytime a die is cocked, you roll it again. All right, so it ended up being 2 anyway. So, that is some big hits to them. That's it. So they take 1 damage. So they were at 12, so now they're down to 11, and that is their turn. This is going to be tough for them. So they have 5 health, so they have to at least reduce it 2 to get it down to 3. So I think what they're going to do is they need defense. This is the only one with defense dice, or they could switch to low guard, which would give them a gray and a blue die, and then when you focus, you gain 1 rage token. They could do that, but I think they want... Let's go ahead and do this, and we're going to boost it again twice. That's why it's good to get cards with the similar symbols. So we're going to do this. So they get 2 red from the card, 1 blue, 2 red from being in high guard, and then they get to choose any other dice, 2 dice because they boosted twice. So they're going to choose 2 more blue to help defend. All right, and they're hoping to get 3 red attacks because they get to roll an additional red die. And this card says if you resolve 2 defensives, your opponent cannot roll blue dice. So if they can get a lot of attack, they won't be able to defend with blue dice. Cock die, so I'm re-rolling that. All right. So they have some options here. They could re-roll some dice. So they definitely want these. This armor wouldn't help them right now. It would come into play later, but that might be a good idea to get one of those armor tokens. But I think they have some cards that want these Torii tokens, and we haven't been able to use yet. So we might want to keep this so that we have another Torii token and just do 1 damage and be done. Or, they can't defend this time, so maybe going for some more attacks. So we are going to use this. We're going to roll this and this, just both of those. All right, so they got 2 of these. Now they could use these as focus, which gets them the Torii tokens, or strikes. Let's use 1 for focus. So we'll take another one of those back, and 1 to strike. All right, and they're going to use this to strike again. All right, so they ended up doing 3. So 1, 2, 3, and they're in high guard. So when they roll 3, they get to roll 1 more red die. So this is working out for them. All right, so that was blank. They're going to take an armor token from that one. They're going to defend twice, which gives them 3 damage. So they're now down to 2, which is not good for them. They really need to make sure they're taking no more damages. And since they defended with 2 of these, the opponent cannot roll blue dice in their turn. And that's the end of their turn. And then they take these tokens and put them over here. All right, so we have to keep in mind we can't use blue dice, which is fine. This is the only one with blue dice on it. So we could do this one, which gives us 3 of the gray dice. We can't strike, so if we get any of these, we have to use them for focus. This one would it lets us use 2 armor tokens to defend 3 defense, but we don't have any armor tokens. So let's go, and we're going to boost this card. So there's a gray. They get 3 gray, 1 red, 1 gray. And then since they boosted, let's go ahead and take a red and put some more damage on them because they don't have a lot of space to work with. All right, so let's go ahead and roll. So we cannot strike, and we add 1 red die for every 2 armor we resolve. All right, so we did get 2 armor. So they'll take 2 armor tokens. So they're going to add another red die in here because they resolve those, which doesn't attack. And then 2 defenses, 1, 2. So they're only going to take 1 damage, which brings them down to 10. And I just remembered they can, since they're Midgard, they can store this attack, which is what I think they're going to do instead of doing the damage. All right, and that is their turn. So these come over here. They already took their 1 damage, so that goes down, and it's back over to the gray player's turn. Now, gray did not take any damage this turn. This is the perfect time to switch guards. So they've been getting hit a lot. They're going to go all the way down to low guard. So they get their cards back. They get a rage token in their holding area. And low guard ability is when you focus, you gain a rage token. So anytime they focus to get a Torii token, they get a rage token. So they're going to roll gray and blue. And they got an armor token, which would fill these in. They would have to replace their Torii, but I don't feel the need to re-roll these. I don't want to replace this Torii, so they're going to be done. They're just not going to take the armor token. This goes over the holding area, back over to the black player. All right, so black is down to 1 card, and it's a defensive card, so I think they're going to actually go into guard, switching their guards. So they're going to go to high guard, take a rage token. They get 2 red. Then their high guard ability is if you boost on a turn, you get to roll 1 additional red die. Well, they're not playing any cards now. We can use this during this turn if we want, so let's see what we get. Woohoo. So they got 2. We are going to use this. We're going to put 3 on them. 1, 2, 3. They're at 2, so they have to at least reduce it down to 2 here. So that's their turn. They take this in the holding area and put it right there. All right, so we need some defense again. I feel like we keep doing the same stuff. Um, hmm. We have an armor token. You know what? Let's get on the offensive. This could be bad, but we're going to do a Furious Charge. So we get a Tori token. We get 3 red dice. We get a gray and a blue. And remember, low guard is if they focus, they get a rage token. We're going to spend this rage token and put another red. We're going to really try and put pressure on them instead of them putting pressure on us. All right, so we only have one of these. Now we're going to get a Tori token, so I feel like we should just use this to re-roll these. Okay, they have 2 of these. Now, there is a card in their hand, which I want to go over now, that's you can spend 2 Tori token. So this card says spend 2 Tori token. Your opponent cannot roll dice from their guard and must ignore their effects on their weapon. So that's pretty good. That's why I've been trying to get the Tori token. We also have this one, which says if there are no attack against you, deal 1 damage. So deal 1 damage means it just goes straight to their die. They don't even do the tokens on the board. And then if you do, you may spend 1 Tori token to deal 2 additional damage. So that's 3 direct damage to their die. So that's why they've been wanting to get these Tori tokens. So I think they're going to, well, obviously they're going to roll 1 because they can only hold 2 anyway. So they're going to keep this one. And they're going to do a focus. And whenever they did a focus, they get a rage token. That's what their low guard does. So they're going to do a strike with this one. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. So they do 3. 1, 2, 3. I already resolved this. This goes down 1. They use their armor token to go down 1 again, and they are now down to 1 health. So they are hoping they can get a really big attack, hopefully, in the next turn. So they get these, which sets them up nicely for rerolls, and they get that rage token, and they are now done. And this goes down to 0. All right. Black is like, you know what? I'm done with this. We are going to take them out. We're in high guard. Let's go ahead and do a Furious Charge right back at them. So we get 3 red dice, 2 more from the high guard, and we're going to use this rage token to throw in another red die. We are going all out attack. We have some armor, so we can deal with some of that damage if it doesn't go well. All right, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to use this to do a strike. All right, unfortunately that didn't work, but 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That hopefully will be able to finish them off. They didn't boost, so they don't get to use their weapon card. They are going to spend both of these to reduce this by 2 and only take 1. So now they are down to 9. If I can find on the die, there we go, 9 life. And that gets reduced. And they're done to their turn. All right, they got to do something big. So they're going to boost this card. They're going to do Mumashi Strike. And this probably isn't going to work because they need to defend 1, 2, 3, 4. We could do our big defense die, but I feel like we're just kind of hanging on. Maybe we got to do the defense and hope that they roll poorly. All right, we're going to do that. I changed my mind. So we're rolling 3 blue. Cannot collect armor tokens. We get 1 blue and gray. We really would like to save these for some of the other cards we have. But if we roll poorly, we might have to because we need 1, 2, 3, 4 defensive symbols on here. So we're going to go ahead and roll those. Huh. Well, we got armor tokens, which we can't collect. No defense, so we definitely have to use 1. I think they're just going to reroll all. They want a better chance of rerolling all. All right. Whew. Okay, they got lucky. So that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They get an armor token, but they can't collect because of this card. And they get to roll 1 red die for each they defended. They defended 4. That's 4 red dice. So this really could work out nicely for them. Cocked die, so I got to roll that again. Still cocked. There we go. So they got 3. 1, 2, 3. They didn't focus. They don't get a rage token, but that was nice for them. So they are done with their turn. They survive, and they put some pressure back onto black. All right, black is like, what do I have to do to get rid of these guys? So I think they're going to do a strong parry. We haven't seen this card yet, so they get 2 blue, 2 red from their high guard. And this one says your attacks resolve as attack and defense, so it's like extra defense for them. So they're going to go ahead and roll these. All right. They're going to use these both for strikes, so they're going to go try and get some more damage. They're going to do another strike. Uh-oh, this isn't looking good. Oh, my goodness. So that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They also get to resolve each one of these as a defense, so that definitely takes care of that. They don't even need this one. And then they get an armor token. And they did not boost, so they don't get an additional red die. So that is their turn. All right, well, they don't have a whole lot they can do. They're just going to try and do as much damage. So they're going to do this one that I showed you earlier, Mumashi Strike. So it says if there are no damage against you, deal 1 damage. If you do, you may spend 1 Tori to deal 2 additional damage. I think that's their best bet. So they got to get rid of all this damage, though. Let's see what happens. So we're going to boost it up. So we got 2 red, a gray and a blue from the guard, and then we're going to just take 2 more blue from the 2 boosted cards we used. And we're going to just throw in that rage token. Why not? Get another red card. All right. So here we go. All right. Well, this isn't enough to defend all of them, so you definitely have to use this story token to reroll this. They're going to reroll these. Hopefully they can get. I think their fate is sealed. All right. So they defend 3. 1, 2, 3. They do 3. 1, 2, 3. They get an armor token. They can't use this ability because they are taking damage. In fact, that damage kills them. We check for end game. They are dead. They are not. So black is the winner. And that is Bushido. So hopefully you like this video. I'm going to continue to post more playthroughs. If you like the videos, please subscribe. And if you know there's certain games that you want to see as playthroughs, I will put a link to my Board Game Geek of games that I own. If you can put comments in, games you'd like to see, I can post those. All right, thanks for watching.